This is the House Judiciary SubCommittee virtual roundtable on COVID-19 in prisons and jails, May 22nd, 2020.
Thank you. Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Chairwoman Bass, for your leadership on this issue. I want to thank Chairman Nadler for his leadership of the full committee, and thank you to the witnesses for your powerful testimony today. Mr. Patton, you had mentioned in your opening remarks Terminal Island Prison. As you know, that's a facility in Southern California that has approximately a 70% infection rate of COVID-19, and at least 8 inmates have died. There are numerous other prisons, as you noted, that have similar high infection rates with multiple inmates dying. That's one reason that Congresswoman Barragan and I wrote a letter to the Federal Bureau of Prisons asking them to release all inmates into home confinement and to come up with a plan for the other facilities. And it's also why Congressman Jeffries and I wrote a letter to the Inspector General asking them to investigate the Bureau of Prison and Department of Justice's inadequate response to the COVID-19 outbreaks. My two questions to you have to do with the legal standard for cruel and unusual punishment. As you know, the first prong that has to be met is that it's objective standard where there was a substantial risk of serious harm to inmates. So let me ask you, if a prison has approximately 70% of inmates having been infected with a life-threatening virus and 8 inmates having already died, would you say that that could pose a substantial risk of serious harm to the inmates?
Well, given the environment that we're talking about, it certainly does. I don't think there's any question. When you combine that level of infection with the living arrangements in the facilities, the constant close social contact, and the lack of appropriate sanitation, that standard is clearly met. And if it's not, it's hard to imagine what would.
Thank you. In your earlier testimony, you used the word callous to describe the actions and views of the Department of Justice and Federal Bureau of Prisons. So when you've got Terminal Island facility with probably 70% of the inmates being infected, and again, 8 having already died, would you say that the actions of the Department of Justice or the Federal Bureau of Prisons could be deliberately indifferent to the risks posed to prisoners?
Unfortunately, yes. You know, I think we'd all like to believe that responsible officials at a place like the Department of Justice, with justice in the name of it, would act in a more responsible way. But the fact is, they just are not.
And thank you for your answers, because they established cruel and unusual punishment. And I think it's also one reason why a federal judge in Ohio recently found that prisoners who made a cruel and unusual punishment claim at Elkton Prison had a high likelihood of succeeding on their merits, and he ordered the prison officials to essentially release inmates of home confinement. So thank you for your work and for your advocacy, and I believe that the Department of Justice every day now is engaged in cruel and unusual punishment, violating the Constitution, and that is completely unacceptable. My last question goes to Ms. Caldwell. Thank you for your powerful testimony. I just want to confirm that you stated the Federal Bureau of Prisons denied home confinement because they said that your father had not served more than 50% of his sentence. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay. I simply note that Paul Manafort did not serve more than 50% of his sentence, yet he was released by Attorney General Bill Barr. Paul Manafort happens to be the former campaign manager of Donald Trump and is a friend of the president. That is disparate treatment. It's my hope that the Inspector General not only looks at his case, but also investigates your father's case. And with that, I will yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. Representative Madeline Dean.